Hello, everybody. My name is Alison McWhinnie, and I'm a trustee with the Confederation of Healing Organisations. And I'm delighted to be interviewing today, as part of Healing Awareness Week 2024, Angie Buxton King. Angie is a healer herself and a tutor, a published author, and an award-winning charity trustee. A warm welcome, Angie. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview for us. I'd like to start our conversation off with you telling us some more background about you and how you came to lead, that led you up to setting up the charity, the Sam Buxton Sunflower Healing Trust, and the work that the charity does.
Okay, well, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity. And it's my opportunity to be able to give a little something back, because the Healing Awareness Week has supported our charity twice in the past. So I'm delighted to be able to give you something back. So where did it all start? Well, it all started a very long time ago. And that was when I first encountered ill health within my own family. First, my mum, which led me to the Bristol Cancer Centre, as was. And Rosie Daniels was her doctor down there. So we'll go back a long way. And then that was my first encounter with healing. So mum had healing there. That awakened my interest in healing. And for the next 7 years, I went on a journey of development, really. Alongside the colossal loss of losing my mum to ovarian cancer. So 7 years after mum passed away, my youngest son, Sam, was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And with the very same sort of setup, the information that was given to us that this was not a leukemia that responded well to chemotherapy, that we should prepare ourselves for the worst, but they would try some initial chemotherapy. So here I was back on the same circle of the medical world saying there's nothing much we can do, but we'll have a little go, which is fantastic. But actually, this wasn't going to cure or help my loved ones. So Sam's journey lasted for 3 years with his leukemia. He really should have not lived for very much longer than 3 months, according to the statistics, but he lived for 3 years. And during that 3 years, all of my development for the previous 7 years came into its own, because I wasn't a mum on the ward who didn't have any other way to help their son. I was a mum that actually was sitting on my hands, and my hands were going to be the most important thing because they could channel energy into my son. So Sam's journey right from the start was very different. He retained his quality of life, his zest for life, and really he had quite good quality of life for 3 years, although we had some very, very difficult times, which I wrote about, of course, in my first book, which was The NHS Healer, published in 2004. So that was 6 years after Sam died, actually. So following Sam's death in 1998, I decided that as I now knew what energy could do, energy, love, and compassion are what I consider to be the tools of a healer, then I couldn't just sit on my hands. That's not who I am. So I wanted to take healing into hospitals. So Sam had been treated at Great Ormond Street, so I approached there initially. They listened politely, but weren't going to have healing there, and I don't think they have healing there to this day, actually. They have some support for the parents, but they've never given the therapies to the children there. That would be nice if that changed. But now that I knew exactly what healing could do for others, I wasn't going to rest there. So I looked around in that area, and UCLH, University College London Hospital, was somewhere that already had some reflexology and aromatherapy. So I went and knocked on their door and said, this is what I can potentially offer you. Will you give me the opportunity to prove a need? And much to everyone's amazement, I was. And from that, I became the first salaried healer. There are plenty of other healers who've done important work in the past, but I was taken on as part of the salary and the budget. So that was different. And that has been our model going forward, which I'll cover in a moment. If you're salaried, you're integrated into the healthcare team in a way that you're not if you're not a volunteer. Volunteers do fantastic things, but our charity's ethos, which we'll talk about in a moment, is to be integrated in. So I was integrated in from a month after I went in to prove a need. Why? Because healing is hugely supportive to people going through the cancer journey. And this was very easily noticed right from the start. not only that, but it supports the nurses on the ward, and also the families on the ward, all of which I knew because I'd been down that road myself. So that was that. I was in as 1999, and I worked there quite happily as a healer for until 2003. And it's very important to state, really, that my training at that time was spiritual healing. Although really nobody within the organisations that I was working for knew the difference between spiritual healing or anything else you wanted to call it, to be honest. But that was my background and my training. And in 2000, I met Graham, my husband, who became my husband, and he was doing Reiki. I was very scathing about Reiki at the beginning. I just thought it was a commercialization of what I already knew. But actually, Reiki has been the most amazing bridge to bring healing to the bedside in hospitals and conventional settings. It's the word. And words can close doors and they can open doors. It's not the therapy, because the therapy, in my humble opinion, I teach both systems, is the same. But the word is different, and it's the word that closes doors or opens them. So Reiki is a lot more than that, actually, but this chat is not about the differences. I've spoken a lot about the differences at conferences and so on for the last 25 years. And people still like to stay in their tribes, which is a shame, because we as healers, I believe, should be all banding together and just getting to where patients need us, not actually warring amongst ourselves. But that's how I view it. People are very wedded to their disciplines. So Graham and I, Graham then was taken on as a volunteer, actually, within the children's unit at Middlesex. He was taken on not by me, but somebody else. They said, we like what you're doing, Ange, with the adults. We want to give it to the children. Do you know anyone who could do this? You might have thought that the obvious thing was for me to do it, but that's not what I wanted to do. I'm fully aware that I am the archetypal wounded healer, and I didn't need to stand next to children's beds and watch them go through the journey that they were doing. I could be more valuable elsewhere. So Graham, with his very placid nature, was the perfect person for the children's ward, and they took him on as a volunteer. He made a huge success of that. So now Graham and I were working in the NHS as healers. He Reiki, me spiritual healing. And then in 2003, my manager then, Stephen Rowley, decided he wanted to take complementary therapies, as we are now known within that setting, into the next level. And that would mean that we needed structure and form around what we were doing. And to that end, we needed a manager. Now, I definitely didn't want to be a manager. I was very comfortable just working as a healer. But Graham came into my life for a reason, without any doubt at all. We achieved more together than we ever could have done separately, because he pushed me. So I wanted to stay as a healer. He said, you can do more if you become a manager. You'll have more clout, you'll learn the systems, and you'll be able to do whatever you want to do with them, which was absolutely true. But being a manager is a bit of a poison chalice. And I've written about all of these kind of experiences, as well as the positive side of it, in my second book, which was published 2017, which is The NHS Healer Onwards and Upwards. And in that book is the blueprint for our work as a charity. So in 2003, we didn't have a charity. 2004, my first book was published, and I was given an amount of money. And this is actually how it happened. I'd written the book. I was ready to publish it. And then I woke up one morning with a very, very strong impression that I'd never actually thought about it before, that I needed to create a charity. So, you know, those of us who believe in messages from other dimensions will know that that was imprinted on me, I guess. I never thought of it at all. But I woke up very clearly with that view. So I said to Graham, I'm going to create a charity. Will you help me? So he said, of course, you know, we'll do it together. So we did. So we created a charity with the money that I'd made from Sam's book, The NHS Healer, and that was it. Our charity was in place. Our charity's remit is to place healers, Reiki or spiritual healing. Why those two? Because there are national occupational standards that underpin the work of those. So we're now fitting into a conventional statutory setting. Can you hear my dogs?
Yes, we love dogs. They're agreeing with this.
Yes, they are. So if he carries on, I'll have to go and shut him up or let him in here. Um, so um, so it matters that we have a structure if we're going to integrate. And so the National Occupational Standards is a long process that Sue, your CEO, will know only too well. We all sat on many, many panels during the early 2000s going through to the next decade. And from that came the National Occupational Standards and a lot of difficulty amongst the healing organisations. But we got through it.
Wow.
And I'm really, really glad that we got through it, because that does aid integration. And not everybody's aim is mine and Graham's aim, which is to put healers into the NHS, but it is ours. And so that has facilitated that. Another important person that I'd like to mention is Dr. Jean Galbraith, who was very instrumental in lots of things around the early 2000s, and I certainly knew her very well. And she said to me, Angie, my upstairs management. So Jean always referred to spirit as upstairs management. That used to make me laugh. But anyway, she did. And she said, upstairs management have told me that Reiki has come into our consciousness so that we can expand healing into the statutory settings, which is what you and I care about so much. Without that word, we would not be able to do it. And I think that's the truth. You know, our job descriptions now for the healing posts that we offer via our charity do say spiritual healing or Reiki, but 9 times out of 10, the hospital recruiting will prefer to call it Reiki. Yeah. It just causes less issues. And trust me, if you want to get a healer into a hospital, the less obstacles there are, the better.
Sure.
So we created the charity 2004, and then we were very, very fortunate that Deep Purple and some of their wives, Ian Pace and John Lord, and their wives, who are Jackie and Vicky, they came on board and did some amazing fundraising, which gave us the platform to spring off and move from the 2 healers at UCLH, which was Graham and I, to spread it into all the other cancer departments within that trust, and then from there go out into other hospitals. Because my dad used to say, money's no good if you don't spread it around. And that's true.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. So we very much act as a charity that is a broker. We bring funds in, and then we place them as far as possible into hospitals as soon as possible. So that's what our charity does.
Excellent work. And you actually have got healers into quite a number of hospitals and hospices as well, haven't you?
We have. So our aims and objectives are to place healers into NHS hospitals or hospices, anywhere where there's a cancer patient. So we only work with cancer.
Yeah.
The reason we did that was if I learn something, I use that information. And I quickly learned that if you scatter your approach, you cannot show that you're making an impact. So if you spread your money too wide, if we'd just gone into lots of different departments at UCLH, people wouldn't have noticed. But because we were in cancer, then we could do all sorts of evaluations that then gave us the evidence to be able to say, this is what it's doing. This is worthwhile spreading outside of where we currently are. So we have placed healers in 20 other hospitals or hospices, and we have in total placed 40 and part-time posts. So they're not full-time. So what's our model? Our model is to pump prime a post within the NHS to show them how important healing is, and by doing so, to want them to then keep it on after our 2-year fixed pump priming period. That worked. I say worked because the NHS is in deep problems at the moment, and everything is changing, and it is very, very difficult to get a post created now because the HR system is completely backed up, and you might be lucky if you get a post in within a year of somebody approaching now, which is very disappointing. So as a charity, we're constantly looking at, do we need to change? Do we need to do it a different way? Our only goal is to place healers at the bedside of people who need healing. So we will adapt if we have to. But the only thing that's stopping us expanding widely is money.
Mm.
because we do pay people, and you've already heard me say why we do that, because then they become integrated in, and then after 2 years they are usually kept on, which means that you've planted a seed. I like to think of ourselves as a virus, but a nice
Yes, absolutely. So if we have any healers watching us today, what's the pathway for them to get taken on as a healer in a hospital?
one. Okay. Thank you for the question. The answer is we have a very clear pathway. The NHS loves a blame line, loves a pathway, loves responsibility and structure. So therefore, we give them what they want. So all of our information, of course, came initially from UCLH because we created the policies and the pathway from there. And so we as a charity have protocols and policy that govern the work of a healer, because that stops the NHS having to say, oh no, I couldn't be bothered to create all of that. We've got it. It's off the peg stuff. So we can do that. We can share best practice among trusts, and that's what they do. So how does it work? Well, right at the beginning, when we first started spreading outside of UCLH, we didn't require people to come on a healing in hospital training course because we didn't have one. But then when we took the first healers into UCLH who had not done healing in a hospital before, it was very, very difficult for them.
Mm.
It's very, very difficult to adapt and work in that setting when your only experience is either in a mind, body, spirit festival or working from home. Working from home is incredibly different to working in a hospital. So very quickly we realized we had a need here, and we did have the information, but we needed to share that information. So we created the Healing in Hospitals and Hospices training, and we've been delivering that ever since. And you'll see various people talk about that on the internet, saying that well, they will say exactly what I've just said, that it's incredibly important that you're prepared for this work for a variety of different reasons. And you've been on that training,
I
Alison.
have. I thoroughly loved that course. I found it so very helpful. And what I don't think I've shared with you is I've not given healing to a cancer patient in hospital, but since taking that course, I have gone several times to an intensive care unit and given healing to sisters, nurses, and some doctors in the intensive
Fantastic.
care unit in their staff room, who were feeling incredibly stressed by the impact of COVID on their
Yeah.
jobs. And so I went several times with some colleagues to give healing to them. And I loved the course at the time, but it was so insightful for actually making that journey into intensive care,
All
albeit in a
right.
slightly different environment
Yeah, yeah.
from the cancer patient.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I mean, this information could be useful for anybody who wants to work in any department in the NHS. It's just that our charity just funds into cancer.
Yeah,
So we do focus a lot on cancer within the training because that's where we're going to fund you for.
sure.
But really, the approach and the structure would be the same wherever you wanted to work in the NHS. So the pathway is now currently and has been for a long time. And why haven't we changed it? Because it works. Why, we don't need to change it if it doesn't work, which is why we're looking at things now. So the pathway is that healers who are completely fully trained via spiritual healing or Reiki can apply by showing their certificates and filling out the booking form to have a place on our healing in hospital training. So that's the beginning. They come on the training, and I'll be very honest, 50-50 whether they take it forward, because a lot of people, having been given a really clear picture, don't want to do it.
Mm.
It's not for them. They realize that. And I think that's a really useful thing to know.
Yes.
It's much, much better to know that this is not for you than for you to end up at the end of a long process at the bedside and not be able to deliver the therapy to that person in need.
Yeah.
So that's why we prepare them. So, but after that training, which is just a 2-day weekend course usually, they then have their certificate, Healing in Hospitals and Hospices training certificate. And they then, because people come from all over the country to go on this course, in fact, we had a lovely Danish group come on the course last year, which is great. They're taking the information, going back to Denmark and trying to implement something similar.
Wonderful.
But they come on the training, they go away full of enthusiasm usually, and then they are told to focus on the cancer hospital in their geographical area. will completely support them once they're making this approach, but they have to do that research themselves. Why? Because these posts require passionate, driven people.
Yeah.
And if you're not passionate and driven, then you just think, well, I think I might quite fancy that, you might let us down. And our model's too precious to us to allow that to happen. So we know that the person who wants to do this work has to take the first step, and we teach them where to go and who to approach, but they have to do that step themselves. That's all they have to do. And then if that hospital is interested, they'll come on to us and we pick it up and we create a post. So I don't know what's happening there. Let me just close that. So we then follow that post up. So what will then happen is that I give them all my information, protocols, policies, blah, blah, blah. They say, yeah, we're going to advertise it, we're going to do it. And then the healer who is approached applies for that post. Now, a lot of healers in the past have said, but you mean I might not be the person who gets the job? Well, no, if you're not the best person on the day, that's called equal opportunities, and you might not be. But the chances are you will be, because you've been on the training.
Yeah.
And when we first started bringing new healers in at UCLH, we would have 80, 90 applicants for a 14-hour post. So the competition was fierce at that time, because we didn't shut it down to Reiki and spiritual healing. Now we do. So it's very streamlined, very focused to enable us to get the right person at the bedside. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So if the healer really wants to do this work, they will do it. 40 of them have done it. A lot of people come on the course and don't carry it forward. That's their choice. I absolutely agree that I used to work as an animal healer, and Charles Siddle, who some people will remember, used to say to me, remember, if you're frightened of something, don't do it.
Mm.
So if I'm frightened of a bull, don't go and work with healing on a bull. And this is the same with these healer posts within the NHS. If you can't cope with seeing people potentially die from a very devastating illness, then this is not the right setting for you. Better for you to know that now than later.
And I think it's about the hospital environment as well, and all the equipment that could be around a person that you're going in to see, and how the hospital ward works as well, and making sure you're part of that flow rather than going against it.
And that's exactly what the training is about.
Yeah.
We show films describing it. We do role play. The role play is the most important part of that training, because people, when they're asked to actually describe healing, because you're going to describe healing to somebody right from the get-go. When you make your first approach, they're going to say, well, what is your therapy?
Yeah.
So you need to be pretty damn confident that you've got a very short, succinct description of what your therapy is. Then each patient, you're going to ask them at the bedside, would you like some Reiki or spiritual healing? And you're going to have to describe it to them, because that is informed verbal consent at the bedside.
Sure.
So you have to be very good and very confident at doing that. And when I first went in, was I good at that? No. Did I get good at it? Yes. It's just practice. But we practice initially in the training, and then you'll be quite savvy with it by the time you're actually on the ward and you're working with people. It will become your patter, and you'll be very good at it.
Mm. And I think, just to say once again, I cannot recommend that course highly enough.
Thank you very much.
It really was an excellent course. I learnt so much from it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And it's a 2-day course, and very well worthwhile, particularly if you are considering going into a hospital or a hospice environment.
Absolutely. You know, I come from the spiritual healing world, and I know that there have been some critiques over the last 25 years. Can you believe it's 25 years?
Wow.
Gosh, there have been some critiques that we shouldn't be charging for the course. People don't seem to understand that the income from the courses helps fund the posts within the NHS. And the course is not expensive. It's
No, it isn't.
£180.
For 2
And when you
days.
think, yeah, and when you think that some training that we've all done as healers is far in excess of that, but it doesn't give you the potential to go and work in a hospital. So I think we have to give ourselves a little reality check there.
Yeah.
It's a good investment.
That leads very nicely on to donations for your charity and supporting your charity. And I know you have a friends program as well. I wonder if you could take us through how people can get in contact with your charity and also support it through donations and what have you.
Okay, well, for those people who don't know, Graham, my darling husband, passed away with Alzheimer's 18 months ago. And he had Alzheimer's since 2012. And so he was very keen that I continue the work, which of course I'm doing. It's my life's work, really, and Graham's. And so we're continuing with that. But he wanted me to write about his journey with dementia. So as you know, I've written about my journey with Sam, which has helped many, many people within the hospital setting who are going through cancer. He wanted me to do the same about dementia. So I have written the book, and that book is for sale on our website shop. And our website is www.cancertherapies.org.uk, and you'll find the shop tab, and there's you can buy the well, why did it get the title? It's called The Magic Man and His Dementia Adventure. And the reason for that is because the children on the wards at UCH, he worked there for 11 years, used to call him Magic Man, because, you know, children and animals, they just suck up the energy. And he did have a magic aura around him. And so they called him the Magic Man. And we did have an adventure with dementia. It's not a gloomy book. Of course, it's sad in places because, you know, it was sad for Graham to have to lose a lot of who he was along the way. But I learned such a lot along the way as well, because when somebody loses their persona and their personality, what you're left with is their soul. And as a healer, that's incredibly important. Excuse me. So in my usual way, I've written very candidly about that, because I think it's no point in giving a cute version of a journey if it wasn't cute. Oh. You know, you're not helping people by that. But within each chapter, there are helpful tips, how to help yourself, how to help your loved one to have the best quality life. And I would really like that book to be able to reach people and to help people know, the families, that they can have their loved ones at home and they can do it too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty formidable, it has to be said. But on the other hand, anyone could do what I did. All you need is love and time. And that's the very thing that the care homes can't offer.
Yeah.
So that's why, as a loved one, I wanted to write this book to enable people to have the tools. And there are lots of tools. There are lots of laughs in that book too. It's not a miserable story, although the ending is assured, of course. But sometimes death is an escape, not the worst thing that can happen to you. And my other book that is still in print, my first book, The NHS Healer, is not in print anymore, but the second book is, and you can buy that there too. Other than that, every charity wants money from you, of course, but coming on the training raises income for us, people just spreading the word, people wanting to do the work. I'm noticing more and more in the last 5 years that since COVID, of course, people are less keen to go into a hospital than they ever were before. So our training dispels the myths and prepares you for the reality that you're just as much at risk of infection control in a gym as you are in a hospital, as long as you are acting in a way that we teach you to do. So those are the two ways that you can help us, really. We don't do too much more than that, really, because that's not where we are at the moment. However, I do feel 25 years in that we are on the verge of another little flurry of activity when it comes to healing and spiritual work being accepted. Now, there may be another word change, but I personally wouldn't want another word change. I think it's confusing enough as it is. But more and more and more, since Graham's death, I've had a complete opening up of my own awareness and quantum physics and understanding the different dimensions. And I think that science is going to help us greatly to be able to explain what we do. That'll be useful. But I can tell you that science is not the answer, because the lovely Sandy Edwards, of course, did this amazing randomized control trial at Birmingham, proved beyond a doubt that there's a benefit, and they still don't have a healer up at Birmingham. So it's not research that gets you at the hospital bed, it's money. It's money and knowing the pathway. And when you've been around as long as I have now, there is a pathway that is respected. And because I was a manager in the NHS, I know how to make a bridge. And that bridge is really important, I think.
Angie, it's been a fantastic chat with you today, and always so exciting to talk about healers working alongside the medical profession, and for that to happen successfully for so many years. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing the pathways, showcasing how healers can do that. And do visit Angie's website and purchase her books and make donations to continue this excellent work. Angie, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.